Okay, hey, welcome to another episode of On the Wrist from Off the Cuff. Today we have a really awesome review for you from the brand Momentum. They were founded back in 1980 out of Canada, and the Saint Moritz Watch Corporation, they've really been in business over the last 40 years, starting out distributing and servicing from other well-known brands like Breitling well into the late 90s, then transitioning into being an OEM supplier, designing, building, and servicing watches for numerous non-watch brands like Land Rover, Eddie Bauer, Aqualung, Sierra Designs, and the North Face, etc. Eventually, they focused on growing out their own Momentum brand, into the 2000s and on. Really, providing well-spec'd divers and other outdoor-themed pieces at entry-level price points, which is probably why they seem very familiar, but they don't, I guess, don't get a lot of play, at least not on YouTube. So I'm really excited to share this brand with you because it's one that I've had my eye on. I've seen a couple of their divers over the years, a couple of their field watches. And they always have these really great aesthetics. I think that they do a good job of kind of touching on and borrowing really cool designs and kind of remixing them in interesting ways that do feel a little bit more home, at an outdoor shop or a retail brick and mortar space. So props to them because they're just doing things a little bit different. And, the nice thing is to this day, they still do kind of offer custom dialed specials for the military and law enforcement entities. So you'll still see, sometimes the Momentum dials rebranded, remixed, and yeah, it's pretty cool. So this particular type of watch I consider an everyday outdoor adventure watch. Some key common characteristics and design language. When you're looking for something within that realm, you're going to want something that's sporty, legible, tough, and absolutely capable. And the Atlas Automatic, which is a 38 millimeter with this nice gradient black dial, absolutely does touch on all of those pieces. And their whole idea for behind this piece is that it really blends timeless field watch style with upgraded specs in a lightweight 38 millimeter titanium case, and in this case it's on the bracelet. So with all that said, let's go ahead, zoom the camera out, get this piece in hand, and take a closer look. Okay guys, as you can see on the sides here, the watch is being flanked by this great rubber strap, and I did want to give you guys a little bit of information on this. This is known as their Goma rubber strap. It's non-tapering, but it's actually really, really excellent. You're probably thinking, hey, this doesn't have any holes. Cool thing is it has the holes here, and basically once you line everything up, you punch the hole through once, and it keeps that really nice minimalist aesthetic moving forward. So you put the keepers on, and you can imagine this on your wrist. It's going to look really sleek and smooth, and they smell really nice. These are, they come out of a very nice factory in Italy, where other brands have resold the same strap for a lot more money. Marathon. So this strap, if you were to buy it through Marathon, would cost you $70. You get it here for $30, unless you actually choose to buy it with the strap, which means you'll just save money in general, because on the bracelet, as seen here, this piece goes for $535 direct from Momentum, or you can get it for under $500 at $495 if you want on leather, Cordura, or this excellent rubber strap. So with that said, let's get to the main event here. And some of you are looking at this and you're like, wow, that looks really familiar, but it doesn't. Okay, so the dial definitely has some aviation chops. Same thing with the handset. And this case is very much reminiscent of Citizen and their kind of ProMaster land and field settings, and I mean even the contours of the shapes around the lugs, the knurling on the crown. It's very cool. The beautiful thing is, from those watches, a lot of them are typically going to be quartz, radio control type things, and I've always wanted them to do a mechanical version. So it's great to see this, and it's using a Citizen Miyota movement in here in the gilt setup, that 9015. So that's outstanding. I love that. It's just such a little nod to to the enthusiast. And then you get, of course, that nice gradient dial, which is reminiscent of something like, let's say, the Prospex Alpinist, the baby Alpinist, right? That has that gradation on the dial. Here, though, the nice thing is you're not getting any type of aged elements in terms of the lume. Nothing's washed out. Everything looks new. And so what it does is it really makes the dial stand out. It looks a little bit more crisp, a little bit more sharp and purposeful and modern, which for me makes it a little bit more versatile in terms of the way that it's going to wear. Now the size on here is just about perfect. 38.5 millimeters in diameter, only 11.7 millimeters thick, 44.5 millimeters lug to lug. Yes, there is a male end link there, so the ultimate lug to lug will be slightly extended, but I mean the case itself, especially considering how great this thing looks on strap, and it's a 20 millimeter lug width, so you can put it on various straps, whether it be a single pass through nylon or something like that, or like the rubber, or this looks great on leather, Cordura. Really anything kind of tactical oriented is going to look fantastic with this beautifully done bead blasted fully titanium setup. Now the crystal is a sapphire. It has a single dome, so there is going to be some distortion at very harsh angles, but it does have a great amount of, as you can see there, anti-reflective coating, which is great. And of course you really have to play with it to make it appear like that. Typically when you're outside, the anti-reflective coating is just going to help you not get a lot of reflections, because there is a slight dome, so this is going to catch reflections out in the wild. So having that anti-reflective coating is going to be huge, and it's something that I kind of frequently knock, at least in my head, Hamilton for, because they just don't do that. At least not in their older offerings or iterations. So I dig this a lot. And then the crown is screwed down, and it's signed and very finely knurled. And you can see even the what's it called? The signature on the crown is lined up nicely there. So really great. Man, I mean, again, this is just something that I feel like this is what enthusiasts have asked for. This is what they continue to ask for, is watches with that kind of clean aesthetic, but also offer you something that's original. It's not just a one-to-one of anything. It's something that ties in and pulls those kind of heartstrings because of the recognizable nature of the theme, but then also a high level of execution, even incorporating nicer materials. This is a type of watch that can disappear on the wrist. I'd say the only drawback is you are going to get the stamped folding section here on this nice twin trigger push button flip lock clasp, but it makes sense, and honestly it's par for the course what you're going to get for something similar to this. And when you start getting into the comparables, somewhere at or near this price point, so totally makes sense from that aspect. Now again, just to give you guys another little quick look, it does have that great Miyota 9015 there, and that gilt finish, which I think is great. Nice, I think, juxtaposition against the beautiful matte blast on this deep gray titanium. So I think that's just a nice little touch that just, again, it adds a nice level of warmth and contrast, and just something kind of fun to look at as well, because the 9015 is not, it's not a huge looker by any means, so why not have some fun with it? So I can appreciate that, and it just adds, again, more to the character of a piece that is, pretty low key, and it's meant to be low key, and kind of that's part of the theme. So we get into this dial, guys, matte black gradient dial with printed indexes. You also get the date at 3 o'clock there with a nicely beveled window. Check that out in the lighting. Very well executed, very well done. You're getting a matte hour and minute hand, and then a painted seconds hand with a nice red tipped accent there. The lume here is Superluminova C3, and it's really well applied. It's very thickly applied, guys. And the nice thing is it doesn't have that overly kind of green look in daylight. So definitely high grade, high finish here in terms of the application of the lume. The crown, as I mentioned, is screw down, and it offers 100 meters of water resistance, which is great. 20 millimeter lug width. solid end link, 3-link style. I only say style because these aren't 3 links put together, as much as it's just one kind of Y-shaped link with some contouring done. You can see the kind of the pins that hold everything together there, likely a steel pin, which is why you can see a bit of a different tone there, which is actually common, for these types of watches. I mean, I've seen this in Seiko's, upwards of $1,000 that have titanium bracelets where you can kind of see the little delineation between the steel pin that's fixed in there, and then the titanium links. And the links themselves that are removable are just, friction fit, which makes sense, especially with titanium. You're going to want to make sure that, because it's so hard, which something's hard, it can also be a little more brittle, right? Just like with glass versus plexiglass. There's not 100% net positive. There's always going to be trade-offs. So with that, I think it makes sense to have the push pins, and then it also keeps things rather affordable. And when I got this, I kind of was like, oh yeah, I mean, this awesome on the bracelet, but I'm like, okay, I'll try it on all these other, I got to get the strap too. But honestly, and oh yeah, the buying experience was pretty straightforward. It was great. So kudos to their direct shop. I was glad to pick this one up and share it with you guys and wear it, because this has been a really cool timepiece, and it's just one of those ones I feel like it's a bit of a hidden gem, so I'm glad I could share it with you. Been rambling, so let's get this on the wrist and see how it wears. Okay, as you can see on my 7.5-inch wrist, really wears beautifully. It just covers the right amount of space. It does have a little bit of a smaller dial, so it does, I think, visually keep the weight quite small there, so it doesn't seem oversized. Everything is still quite legible, laid out really beautifully, and just looks really handsome on the wrist. And you can see that matte finish is pretty well done because it catches the light in different ways, so it doesn't look completely flat. It has a bit of a satin sheen to it, which is really nice, and I can appreciate that. And this is definitely a piece that disappears on the wrist. The bracelet does taper slightly to 18 millimeters, down from 20. And yeah, it just comes together. I'm really digging it. So with that said, let's actually get this beast charged up, get some lume going, low light transition, and closing thoughts. All right, let's go ahead and hit the lights here. As you can see, really nicely lumed. Great for a field watch. I'd say even impressive for a field watch, because again, this isn't a diver or anything like that, so you don't want, actually, if you're out in the field and say you're in some type of tactical situation, you don't want the lume to be so bright that it's going to give away your position. So I think really well executed, very sharp, and again, considering that there's not a lot of surface area, I like that it's really nicely applied and quite thick and sharply applied. So but one thing I really love to get going is some low light transition here, so we can get some mixed lighting conditions just to see how these colors, textures, and finishes all render in less than optimal lighting. And as you can see, as to be expected, the finish, ooh, wow, that satin blasted finish on the bracelet and case just renders beautifully. Even let's try it with some high contrast there. Okay, not seeing a lot of in the way anything being exposed in terms of a defect, but look at the way that dial just negotiates the lighting. You can see the warmth from the center kind of open up and radiate, but you're still getting beautifully legible high contrast areas in between the numerals, the markers, the hands. Everything just works. So I like that in terms of the functional standpoint, everything works really well. And this is just a really cool, fun piece, guys. closing thoughts here. On the wrist, it wears a lot like a Seiko Alpinist, Zin 556, or a Citizen ProMaster Land. So it's in really great company. And typically it's going to be cheaper kind of than those options. And I mean, I guess maybe competitive against probably that ProMaster Land. But then at the end of the day, that's typically going to be a quartz movement. So getting that is really great. And then of course it's gonna be a lot cheaper than a 556. It's gonna feel a little bit different. Of course, it's titanium. So it's going to be a lot lighter than something like an Alpinist, which could be great. And then in terms of model variants, there's various quartz iterations. This was kind of the special that they did, was to make it, a mechanical movement. And those other variations, they range, of course, those quartz powered, but they range in size and dial design. So they'll have some that are larger, some that are smaller, kind of across the board. In terms of comparable models, this is a really well priced and spec'd, I think, competitive option to the top mainstream offerings. Within kind of this price point from the Hamilton khaki and beyond, especially considering that the khaki is actually they're now updating that, making that one with the titanium option more readily available. They're doing some fun things with the dial, making it a little bit more symmetrical. So there's a lot of cool stuff that's going on within that space. But then this one also has a smoother sweep because it's a full 4 hertz versus the 3 hertz on those Powermatic movements that Swatch Group is using. So I think that's definitely something to consider. And then of course, if you put that against something like even a Seiko Alpinist, they're also using the lower beat count, the 3 hertz as well, but with an extended kind of 70-hour power reserve, so a little bit longer power reserve versus here. But yeah, I mean, bottom line, this is a really impressive release, I think, from a brand that continues to lead kind of the micro market within this space. They're doing something different. They're kind of doing it their own way. They've dabbled in, again, some really mainstream stuff, and but the crazy thing is they haven't really got their name out there, because a lot of the stuff they do in the mainstream has been rebranded, right? They do this kind of black label thing. So they have a lot of experience in terms of watches, distributing them, servicing them, designing, executing, and yeah, it's nice to see that all kind of come together in a package that speaks to me as a watch enthusiast and a collector. But let me know what you guys think in the comments below. If you liked the video, please do a like, and if you haven't already, please subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks, guys.